All right. Hope everyone had a lovely weekend. I hope you guys got some time outside yesterday because the weather was lovely. So I'm just going to go ahead and dive on into attendance. I do know that Shane Vick will not be here. They had a scheduling issue. So he is driving around in an ambulance today. So, all right. Fair. Yes, 100%. Catherine Barrett.
Here.
Aaron Black.
Here.
Catherine Bullard. Jonna Drake.
Here.
Gary Dreith.
Here.
Terry Hildebrand.
Here.
Lori Ward. Okay. We'll wait and see if she comes in. Sarah Mayer.
Here.
Jordan Pryor here. Mike Scholl. We'll wait on Mike as well. Jessica Schneider. All right, I need to do some of these real quick. Ron Stoddart. I didn't forget you this time. Patty Swiger. Merlin Thompson, I see you.
Here.
And Natalie Walsh. Perfect. And I'm missing one other person on this that I didn't work out. Lori, here we go. Okay. With that, sorry, I'm having to read off of my phone today. I did not come as prepared as normal. So for agenda review, we're going to be having some updates both on the subcommittee end. There she is. Perfect. Which it's going to literally be about a 60-second update. PCAB update, and then also talking about the implementation groups. That'll be real brief, just probably about 10-15 minutes of our time. Then for most of the meeting, we're going to be goal casting and kind of seeing what it is that we're wanting to achieve by the time our time is done here. And then if we have time at the end, also planning for our April 4th meeting. And that will also include making a little bit of time to talk about the Hannah, is it April 25th? That's the
April 20. That sounds right. 26th.
26th, April 26th, when we will be presenting in front of council again. So, all right. And Mike is here as well. So is Jessica. Okay. All right. So with that, anybody have any changes to the minutes that they need from last meeting? No? Well, then I move that we approve the minutes from the last meeting. Second, all right, the meeting minutes are approved. With that, public comments. I'm going to venture to say we don't have any in-person comment today. I know we don't have any email comment either. Do we have any phone in comment today?
Thank you, Chair Pryor. If you would like to speak to this item, please press *9 on your phone or choose the raise your hand button.
Chair, there's Jessica.
Yes, I changed it on here.
We don't see anyone, Chair Pryor.
All right, so no public comment today. And with that, we'll just go ahead on to our first main agenda item, which is the updates. As far as from our end on the subcommittee, I reached out to Jennifer Yost. It's Jennifer, right? Nicole Yost. I'm so sorry, you guys. It has been a Monday. I reached out to Miss Yost just to kind of lay down the groundwork. And then after this meeting, I will team up with Sarah and the rest of the subcommittee and figure out the times that work best.
Talk about the things we're discussing with her.
There you go.
Okay, so the things we will be discussing are the goals and outcomes that we expect from our, what's that page called?
Let's talk Loveland.
Let's Talk Loveland page. We need to pick a banner image for the project. So if you guys have anything that you think is really representative, let me know. And then we want to start talking and discussing what we want Lovelanders to do, think, or feel when they visit our page. So that's what we'll be chatting about. So again, if you have any thoughts on that, let me know and we'll work with her when we meet up.
Excellent. Yeah, and we'll get that meeting scheduled after we're done here tonight and just pick a good time for all of us to sit down and chat with her. With that, I will turn it over to Aaron, who will have an update for us. I don't know which side I'm supposed to be looking at.
Aaron's right.
Oh my gosh, I'm all over the place today, y'all. I'm so sorry.
And I'm happy to let Patty or Tara speak to this too, if either one of you want to. Mhm. Mhm.
We have had a couple of community engagement committee meetings as far as all of the committees at the police department. And then, like I think was discussed previously, it is broke out into different groups. It's broke out into different groups that are addressing different issues and addressing things that the police department can do as far as increasing community trust. And there are just a lot of really terrific ideas that they are bringing to the table. Some of them they have already implemented, one of which was police departments, they police normally, I think, by district. And so the same officers get to know the people in their district or ward or whatever you call it, this district. But they did away with that and went to more of a data-based policing. And they took another look at that and readjusted and decided that maybe it was good to do both, because the officers that cover those districts get to know the businessmen, get to know people who live there, get to know even, the kids riding their bikes in the streets. So they have gone back to that. They've implemented that. They are trying to do different community outreach things, such as, the neighborhood meetings. And they have been doing that, but I got the impression they were maybe going to do more of that and do a little bit better at actually doing one-on-one with people as far as like patrolling in the downtown area, but walking, doing that kind of thing. They are thinking of implementing community engagement in their training process, and actually coming up with a program where if there is an officer that particularly does a good job at that, that he is rewarded, maybe with a gift card, maybe something along those lines. And also that it might go in their, whatever it is that, they're in their training, they are, it's an FTO program. And if they do, that's going to be incorporated in their training, and it would go on their record that they are showing an aptitude for that. They're being rewarded again for that. There is a lot of information that they were talking about with social media, getting someone who would actually do, I don't know what you would call it, that is more social media savvy. There you go. Pardon?
Public information officer.
Yes, but focusing more on Facebook and things like that, as far as being able to, again, engage the community. The group that I am in, we were to go out and talk to other police departments to see how they engage their communities, and then bring back, what other ones doing. And so we're still in the process of that on it. And let's see, and we did get an email on this, but with the library, how, that's engaging the community. And they had talked about that, how that would be a useful way to engage.
For those who may not have seen the email, there will be it's a listening session, I believe, regarding the LPD. So that is March 30th. I would need to double check the time, but that does sound like something that many of us should feel encouraged to go to.
I think we were encouraged to not attend.
Oh, we were not to attend?
No, I know.
Okay, never mind then,
I was
ignore
gonna
me.
say, We're not a good group to tell no to, but.
Wait, so
To give the community members, yeah, they've heard what we have to say. They want to hear from the broader community.
Is there a limit?
30, yeah. 30.
okay,
So they've asked us. to-
got it. Got it. Okay. Because I was thinking we can sit and just listen. That's just a listening session. Okay. Okay.
Not that I know of. I don't believe that it is. But Nicole, she did say she would get information back to us on that. So that's what I have.
Thank you so much, Commissioner. Chair Pryor, can I speak real quickly?
Go for it.
I just want to clarify, is that the meeting that's limited to 30 people? Yeah,
Yes,
okay. And we're not being encouraged to attend?
we are not.
Okay.
If I can give you the time, is from 5:30 to 7. So, because you'd asked about the time, I have a press release here about the questions they're going to ask. And then as we've done on these, we've done these for vaping when we were doing the vaping process, metro districts, and a lot of other areas where we've tried to get outreach from folks. We understand that 50 is not a number you want 500. So I think what we want to do is try one, see what we get as a response. And then I think there's some other methods we need to explore beyond the library because they are limited in the number of facilitators like they talked about, but they're not limited if we use Martine or somebody from CSU like we've used before in other sessions. So this is a first of several. It's not the one end all.
Yes, Jessica.
Yeah, thank you, Manager Adams. I appreciate that. Is there a reason that it can't also be like accessed virtually by folks, even if there's a limit in the number of people that can speak? Is there a reason that we can't, people can't watch or observe from a virtual way?
So thank you, Commissioner, for the question. This particular process of the Harwood approach seeks to encourage the people that are there to all participate. And so I'm not there. Nobody's going to be standing around. You're all around in a circle or something participating. And there is nobody that's sitting around watching or observing or those kind of things. This is a different kind of engagement process that we've used. And recognize where you're headed with that. And that's what, this is one of many tools. And we're trying this one first. So.
I appreciate that. Just one more quick question. How are people going to be selected? I'm not putting myself forward. I'm just wondering what that process is like if we decide to share that information with other community members.
Yes, if you look at the press release that's gone out, you'll see that at the bottom is a registration link. The way we've done that before is we've had the registration link open until we get 30, and then we stop. But other people just keep registering, and we get a longer list for the next time we may have an event. But we at 30 is how we know that that's who will be there.
So it's first come, first serve, basically. Got it.
Today. So
Thank you.
All right. Lori, I believe you had a question.
Yeah, I have a question and a comment. I think, actually, I think it's good that we're not going to be there because I see this as an opportunity for the community to, for the city, the police department, the community to start on that trust building process, right? I mean, I just think it's more open if people aren't there, looking over people's shoulders. So I think that's good. And then I had a question, and this might be for Steve Adams, but the questions that they're going to be doing at that session are very general, related to the police department as a whole. And I'm wondering if in the hiring process of the new police chief, if there's, sometimes when you hire a city manager or, when we've hired a superintendent, they have like, 3 finalists and the community gets to meet 3 finalists, whatever. Is there going to be some kind of process like that? I'm just curious.
I'll deflect that to city manager because I don't know the answer.
There you go. Sorry, thank you. So we're on the process of planning that process of how we go about all this and selecting the candidates and so forth. And we're anticipating that we'll have, like we had with our fire chief, where we had a session where the public was invited to come. We kind of had them in separate areas of a large area so that people could interact with them. There was cards there. You can make comments about your interaction and so forth and give us that feedback about each one of the applicants.
One quick follow-up. Are you hiring an outside search firm? Or have you hired or going to hire?
Yes, we are hiring an outside
Okay, thanks.
nationwide.
Perfect. Okay. And then Natalie, you had a question, comment, update.
Yeah, but I'm not on that. It's for a different committee.
That's okay.
Are you done with
Yep, I'm
that
done.
category? I think they're still on that category. Yeah.
I was just gonna say, they do have a lot of really good ideas, but there were a couple things that I felt like I was a little bit concerned about. And the main one was part of our issue is that the Jensen Hughes brought up was that the police officers get, it says they have not received formal guidance on working with the community. And I brought that up, that maybe they could do some training with the officers on how to interact with the community, just with my own personal experiences and others I've heard of. And there seemed a little bit of resistance to that. And so I just think it's good for the Trust Commission maybe to know that I don't really know how we would go about trying to kind of push that Jensen Hughes recommendation to get some sort of training on interacting with the community. And the other one, Jensen and Hughes, was really specific about what community engagement outreaches that the police should be focusing on and which ones not so much, because some address like safety concerns and some are just like historically done. And it seemed like the ones that they are wanting to make bigger were the historical projects and not necessarily the safety projects. And so that was just 2 of the concerns, like I like on these committees that we're on, that I just feel like like we need to make sure we speak up, because I don't think there are any other community members besides us on these committees. And so anyways, that was my take. But they are also, there are some that are very much wanting to find some new ways of doing things. And so those were just the 2 that seemed like had a little more resistance to it.
Jordan.
So can we get just a quick clarification whenever it was the first thing that you didn't like, it was training on interacting with the community?
Yeah,
Just a little
so
clarification.
Jensen and Hughes, they just write, like, they broke everything down and then wrote recommendations for the police. And so in here, they were like, we heard repeatedly during our officer interviews, most officers reported that they have not received formal guidance on working with the community. They feel as though the department is understaffed, which was huge. It does seem like they're way understaffed, and that all of their community engagement is done voluntarily paid though. So it's all overtime. It's not their 40-hour job. So all the community engagement is volunteer and overtime is how it comes across to me. And that's what the officers were reporting in their interviews. And the new officers receive online training I think it's, yeah, once every 5 years. And so then they just recommend to focus their training on improving the interactions so that when the officers go out in the community, they know how to interact with the members of the community.
Then maybe we keep an eye on that. And as you guys, push that envelope, if we keep getting pushback, maybe that ends up being one of the recommendations that we make. So, yes.
I've got two questions. So is this the group that's led by Deputy Chief Eric Stewart?
It's Lieutenant Murphy.
Okay, all right, then never mind. Thanks.
Had the next question and then we'll go to you, Mike.
It's just a comment that even though we are not to participate in this community thing, we certainly might know some people who we might recommend to do that. So it's that stuff. That's it.
Mike?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a follow-up question for maybe Commissioner Hildebrand or for the city manager. In terms of kind of accountability and transparency, I mean, one of the recommendations, actually, I'm looking at it, was number 13, related to the Citizens Police Advisory Board, where they discussed improvements that could be made. And it would seem to me that that would be quite easy to do for the city council to make some of those changes and recommended, and how the community, because, that's essentially how the community when we're not here, that's how the community interacts with the police department. And it seems like they're pretty straightforward kind of recommendations. And I was just curious if to Commissioner Hildebrand, if that issue came up, or if they have any, if the city council has any plans to take that up in the near term or ever.
If I may, the PCAB is actually a different work group that I'm on.
Oh, okay.
So if I can do my presentation after Natalie,
Sure.
I'll hope to answer some of your questions.
And then Commissioner Schneider?
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify, and I'm sorry if I missed this. Have Manager Adams, are 30 people signed up already for this particular meeting?
We're talking about two different things, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Different things. Okay, I'll, sorry.
No, you're okay.
Good question. I think Catherine is addressing that too. So there's confusion about what we're talking about.
Okay. Okay. Let's we'll Jessica, we'll come back to that in just a second. I do want to keep us on task. So I just want to confirm, are you guys done with talking about your work group? Okay, just making sure. Okay, and then Natalie.
Okay, so I am on the, it is called the, Supervision, Leadership, and Professionalism Committee. And the first few meetings we're talking about the recommendations of Jensen Hughes to, kind of clarify use of force, and then the de-escalation language. And there was a lot of chit chat, back and forth, lots of opinions. And it was very helpful listening from the police officers, perspective. And, it seemed very open-minded. Then kind of I went through another couple of meetings. And so I have written regulations before. And the process by which they're doing it is making sausage without a casing. And so it's not an easy process to do, and I haven't opined. I'm sitting in a room full of armed and dangerous people and a very new, young, and, interested lawyer, but he's young. So my concern is that they're looking to us to rubber stamp their recommendations. And I'm happy that City Attorney Garcia and City Manager Adams are in here to hear me say that. because that's about where it's going. The way you write, you have regulations not only to train people with, I mean, you have training to train people with, and hopefully the training matches the regulations. But you have regulations so that you can defend the city in litigation, which is an issue that we have for the Gardner case. Those regulations need to be able to withstand scrutiny in court. And so when you have a bunch of amateurs writing regulations, when there are cities across America who have already written those regulations, you're doing the city a disservice because, we're not doing the homework. So it's a committed group. It's very interested. I understand. I really appreciate the police officers' input on, how decision-making goes and when you're in the split second thing. But I kind of sit there feeling like, oh my God, we're wasting these guys' time because this is not going to be a good product. The way we're doing it isn't a good product. It's not how you write regulations. So I'm kind of like, okay, now there's that thing. And then at the last meeting, I wasn't able to attend last week's meeting, but that was on Blue Team Report. But the last thing that came up at the previous meeting was there was some process by which they ended up having to write a gazillion reports every time one thing happened. And, it seemed like a very legitimate objection by the police officers because, you don't want them spending all their time writing reports about stuff. And, I'm thinking particularly since no one looks at it. And so you have the combination of your over papering people, so it discourages accuracy and honesty. And then you're creating too much work for supervisors, which, disincents, removes the incentive to review reports and follow up on and do all this stuff. But the way it was being handled, I really felt like they were asking, like the officers were asking us, this group, to rubber stamp to get away from having to write some reports that may have come out of counsel's office or something like that, or out of HR. I have no idea where it came from. But so I kind of felt like, I mean, I don't rubber stamp anything. If you haven't guessed by now, my personality is not a rubber stamper. So, so I was really disappointed because in the beginning I thought, oh, that's great. They're starting with the Jensen Hughes recommendations and we're doing it this way. And then I'm kind of looking at the work product, and to tell you the truth, I don't feel like as a lawyer, I can stay on that committee because the work product is going to be so far below my own standards and my professional standards that I don't really feel like I can give my name to it. And so I'm reluctant to continue to participate for that reason. And again, it's no offense to the young attorney who's been assigned to this task, but he does not have the background, or he's not the right person to sit in that role other than to, put a body there. And it's really, it just takes more. It's like he hasn't come in and say, oh, I went to all these training classes and here's these regulations that I've written before and here's my qualifications. It kind of just seems like he's real nice, and he's very confident. When you're like year and a half out of law school, you're very confident. Because you haven't had anyone beat you up yet. And he certainly is very confident. And I don't want to be the one to beat him up. So I'm going to keep quiet.
So
I might have just done it now. No, I'm just kidding. Really, it is not about him. It's about who decided to have him sit there, why they decided to have him, what are his qualifications, and then the process by which you write regulations. And why are we doing this in this kind of, like I said, all legislation, all regulations, it's sausage making, but this is loose sausage. So that's my complaint. I'm glad that we're addressing these issues, but I'm very concerned about the work product and the usability of the work product.
So I ended up actually attending the meeting that you didn't from, what was that, 2 weeks ago? Whatever the most recent one was. And I had to attend virtually, so it was one of those things where I was having such a hard time even hearing that I couldn't really speak up a ton. So I'm going to really try my best to figure out a way to carve time out with work to attend in person, because they were talking about, show of force versus use of force, like you were mentioning. And, it does sound like there is a lot of paperwork involved with blue team reports and things like that. But it was concerning that, in the instance that sorry, I have my notes here, but and I'm going to try to explain this as best as I can and get it right. But as long as they aren't actually physically using the weapon on somebody, then they just track it. So based off of what they were saying, it sounded like if they were to, pull a gun on somebody but not use it, just, say, hey, put your hands up, whatever, detain them. However, that still doesn't go into a blue team report, which to me is concerning. And this might just be my own personal background being from Texas and all of that. But, anytime an officer pulls a weapon on somebody, I feel like that should be documented more than just a tally mark.
So I'm just gonna say, so that what you're saying right now kind of confirms my suspicion, because at the first meeting, it was like, oh, it was going to be excellent and very Jensen Hughes accordant. And then you start seeing this little slip away from it. And then they get all the way to where you're talking about. And then they'll be like, okay, so we've talked it through and everyone agrees, right? Do you agree with this? And then they'll show it like this and everyone's kind of going, I can't really see that. So
Yeah. So I'm gonna try and figure out a way to be there in person so I can at least bring up some extra suggestions. So, but that's all I had on that. Were you?
Yeah, no.
Okay. And then did you have a question?
Well, just a comment, if we're supposed to be encouraging trust in the community, it doesn't seem like that's happening. And so somehow speaking with that wet behind the ears yet attorney, one-on-one, or speaking truth to power. It's a hard thing to do. I wouldn't like to do that, but
Yes, Aaron.
And I guess my comment is, in our room for our big group with the LPD, the only BIPOC person in the room is Tara. Who's not really BIPOC. You know what I mean? So I'm not sure about your group, but I'm very concerned about that aspect of community input or other agency input that from that population. I'm very concerned that they're not utilizing that at all. And so the listening session, I'll be very curious to find out the demographics of the people who attend that, because that's a big concern of mine.
And that was one of the things that was brought up in the Jensen Hughes report as well, is interaction specifically with minority citizens. So.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, that's why we're here. And then Catherine, I believe you had an update for us as well.
So quick question, is that the one that Eric Stewart is heading?
No.
Do you know, I'm sorry, Mr. Adams, do you know which group Eric Stewart, Deputy Chief Eric Stewart is heading, which work group? Because I would have sworn it would have been that one.
So Chief Stewart is in a couple of groups. The lieutenants are actually there running the meetings.
Okay,
So.
all right. So, okay, that makes sense. Okay.
So depending on if you tell me which lieutenant you're with, I can tell you Deputy Chief Stewart or Lori Scott or one of the other assistant chiefs or Ray Butler is then the next step up.
Okay, that makes sense. So the fifth recommendation in the Jensen Hughes report regards they call it civilian, I hate that, but they citizen oversight. And all five of the recommendations pertain basically to the police civilian advisory board. And Lieutenant Bob Schaefer is coordinating the implementation of section 5 of that report. And the 5 recommendations have to do with membership criteria for PCAB, term limits for PCAB, encouraging PCAB to write bylaws to ensure that they are able to give meaningful review and advice. Let me go over real quick. PCAB's purpose is to support communication and education between the community and the Loveland Police Department. Additionally, the board shall serve as an advisory body to the Loveland Police Department and the city council concerning police policy, planning, and program issues. And that's it. So Jensen Hughes wants them to be able to review all use of force policies and trainings, review police oversight and accountability policies and trainings, review hiring and promotional policies, receive briefings on critical or newsworthy incidents, and to create provisions to ensure timely delivery of information to that board so they can render an informed vote when they're asked to put their stamp on something. The fourth recommendation from Jensen Hughes was that the LPD should engage the Loveland community by promoting greater awareness of PCAB, their meetings, agenda items, and decisions. And then finally, Jensen Hughes would like, and this is, I think, the most important one, for all of the stakeholders to analyze civilian police oversight models nationwide and make a recommendation on the appropriateness and feasibility of establishing civilian police oversight. And to that, Lieutenant Schaefer asked us to attend a PCAB meeting, which we did on March 7th. And that was where Deputy Chief Eric Stewart was presenting, and he was probably presenting from one of the groups that one of his lieutenants leads. So that's why I keep asking that question. But he mentioned some serious stuff, but I'm out of that, so I'm not going to go over that. I have some questions though that I've asked him about, and I'll let you guys know what that's about because I think it's your group. So yeah. So my questions for PCAB were, I want to know what the attendance requirements are. They didn't take attendance. I don't know how many meetings they're allowed to miss. They seem to miss a lot of meetings altogether where meetings are canceled on a regular basis. Don't really know what is up with that. And aside from one member suggesting more advertising of LPD and citizen events, I didn't hear a single PCAB member comment on Deputy Chief Stewart's presentation. So I don't have any idea where they stand on the Jensen Hughes report, implementation of recommendations on LPD's work group efforts.
Clarify what it is about Chief Stewart's presentation. I'm not sure what.
He gave a very good 30-minute presentation and nobody had any questions or comments in the entire PCAB. Nobody said a word about it except one to suggest that they advertise some of the LPD citizen events. So they just didn't seem very engaged to me. And then we were told that LPD's use of force policy now espouses a commitment to the sanctity of all human life. Ta-da! That was an easy hit. They got it. Yay. That's all.
I think Commissioner Black had a question, and then we'll go to you, Mike.
No, I just noticed in looking back at their previous minutes that they've said that we're just a group that listens to presentations from LPD. It's in the minutes. It's stated just like that. So I think we should take that at face value, that that's what they've been used to. And that's how that group has been working up to this point. So that's probably not their fault that's just how it's been done. That's one of the things that I have down for recommendations to city council is absolutely all the recommendations that Jensen Hughes made for the PCAB, please implement because it needs a complete overhaul. And I'm not sure they've had much direction or guidance. And so they've been used to just receiving presentations. I've got an awful lot of questions for them as well, but I don't think it really matters at this point. I think it just best serve everybody's time just to move forward at this point and try to give that group some better guidance. And yeah, Jensen Hughes nailed it. All of them. Do it.
Thank you. Commissioner Scholl.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I will say, at the risk, I want to be clear. I don't want anything to be construed as a criticism of the people that have volunteered to serve on the Police Advisory Commission. I mean, we're all citizens. I respect people's commitment to public service. I think it's a virtuous thing. And so I'm not trying to be critical of them. I mean, they kind of have what they have. I think it's a little bit more a reflection of the communication dysfunction that that kind of exists in the community that's been allowed to kind of grow and you know, for whatever reason. And I want to read one line from the Jensen Hughes report as it relates to the, just for the benefit of the group. And it's on page, well, it's in the recommendation related to the Police Advisory Commission. And it says, quote, as constructed, PCAB is not positioned to provide what may well be the most meaningful advice on police operations, nor to serve as a vehicle to improve police community relations. To me, that hits like 1,000-pound kind of weight on what we're doing. And I think part of what I've been trying, you know, when I kind of think about what our role is within the community is, if that group functioned as it probably was intended to, we wouldn't exist. And so I think part of, if we get anything out of this, and I hope we do get some meaningful change, I would be very disappointed if we don't include something in our final recommendation, and if City Council does not have the courage to take that up and to implement some significant changes to how they manage the Police Advisory Commission, because it seems like, you know, if you let the people you're overseeing direct the oversight, you're going to get what you kind of pay for a little bit, and so I think that really needs to be taken on. And I don't think that that's something, even quite frankly, that would need to wait until we give a recommendation. I think that's part of City Council's function. So I'll leave it at that, but that's my comment.
No, that was good. And I think that is a really good segue into us doing our goal casting and talking about it. So I already wrote down that we want to implement, or one of the goals would be to make sure that major change is implemented to PCAB and how they function and operate. Because to your point, I do agree, if what they were doing was better outlined and they were the ones kind of on that forefront, yeah, I don't think that we would be around right now. So I'm going to open up the floor to everyone to just kind of, you know, if there's anything on your mind as far as where you're wanting to see us come September 30th, now's your chance. We're on to the goal casting part, goals.
For the fourth, what do we want to achieve if time runs out?
Yeah. Basically, what are we trying to achieve by September 30th? Yes, Patty.
I just had a quick question going back to the Police Advisory Board.
Okay.
Who are there members of the City Council on that?
Yeah, there were two advisors, the two liaisons, and that's Bob Overcash and Dennis. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, I was just curious.
There you go. Okay. And then I saw you guys fight over hands. So, okay. Commissioner Barrett.
I would love to see us address some systemic failures in the Garner case and make recommendations to approve what went wrong there. I'd like to see us continue to work with LPD work groups to implement the Jensen Hughes recommendations. I'd like to have us recommend improvement and funding of mental health resources, both in the field as well as to support the officers.
Fair enough.
And I'd like to have us establish a citizen complaint authority, recommend that all stakeholders do establish a citizen complaint authority, or empower PCAB to become that authority to review all citizen complaints, to review all blue team reports from a citizen's perspective.
Okay. I know, I'm trying to keep up. Please, thank you. And then Natalie, and then I believe I saw a hand up over here at some point. Yes, okay. I got you down, Catherine.
This is, it fits in here because this is the sole thing I hope to accomplish. I hope to accomplish that we hold city leadership responsible for the failure in communication with the community about the Garner arrest and the Garner lawsuit. I think, so it's all focused on that. To that end, I sent an email to everyone. I don't know if people had a chance to look at it. Apparently, the settlement appears to me to have been finalized because it was listed in the loss run that was distributed. And I went on to Pacer, which is the federal docket, online docket thing. And the city of Loveland now too has been dismissed from the case. So by those two pieces of information, I deduced that the settlement must be final in the Garner case. And so I make a request. I think that we should be read in on what that settlement is. And, you know, have an opportunity to discuss it. I look back at my notes from our meeting, our first meeting on October 25th, and we were advised that we were entitled to have executive sessions. So I think that should cover any concern that the city might raise about talking about it. And settlement's final. You know, there are provisions that could be in there that they might want to help us understand why they can't talk about it more, but we don't have any information about any confidentiality of that settlement agreement. So I think we should be, I'm not asking them to give us the settlement agreement because I don't think they trust us enough to have it in hand and paper. And that's fine, but I think that they could print it out and share it. So people here in this commission could see what a settlement agreement looks like, because it's a $3 million settlement. And so I think that would be a nice thing. And maybe people have questions. I will stay away from the hard questions because I know how to ask them, and I'll make it not that way. But I think that we should at least, you know, understand what a $3 million municipal settlement agreement looks like. And maybe even talk about on a chit chat basis, like how that works and how did it happen and how does the city come to, you know, settle this case and what is that liability that the city owns? Because when you look at the loss runs, you see different types of liabilities, police liability, D&O, you know, auto, all that kind of stuff. And this is a unique type of liability that has to do with city leadership.
So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding. You're basically wanting us to have like a executive session with city leadership about the settlements. So it's kind of all out there.
What I put in my email, and you know, would be preferred to have that in an open meeting so that the community could also be educated to what a $3 million municipal settlement looks like and what it involves. But I was anticipating some reluctance on part of the city leadership that are the liaison to our committee to do that in public. So I offered it as an executive session.
Gotcha.
Then we will all also know what happens when the city council retires into a executive session, because it always seems so like all the fun's back there. Then we'll know what that is. So that's my request.
Gotcha. Okay. Real quick, we have Catherine Bullard, Jessica Schneider, and then I'll add you to the list.
Mr. Chairman, before we go on, and I apologize.
Okay.
I would just be.
Can you turn on your mic for me? Sorry.
I was just hoping that perhaps the city attorney and city manager could respond to that, to Commissioner Walsh's request, if that's something that they would entertain or would be appropriate for our group.
I think you're just asking for clarification. Yes, sorry.
Very good.
few, I guess, a few different pieces of information. First of all, I'm not sure if the settlement is confidential to the, so, generally, whether it's a settlement for $50,000 or 3 million, they all look very similar. They contain release agreements. So let me look into that and see if there's an issue with having it distributed to all of this group to take a look and see what one looks like. Because I think, it is interesting if you've never seen one, but then you know what they all look like. So that would be the first thing. The second thing is, so I'm not sure an executive session would be helpful. In terms of the whys, in terms of the reasons you make these settlements, that's really what SIRSA talks about. And without getting into any details, it's going to be, there's always a risk that you can lose. And that risk could be great, or it could be small, but you don't know, because as any attorney will tell you who litigates, when you go in front of a jury, you can never be assured what they're going to do. You wouldn't get much more than that in an executive session, but I certainly would be interested in seeing if I can bring you that settlement agreement to take a look at.
And then, yes, follow up.
Okay, so thank you for having this conversation in public. I appreciate that. I didn't anticipate it. So underscore the thank you for that. I think in this case, the type of questions would be a little bit more specific to the Garner case. And so that's a general sense. I've made the observation that I thought it was unusual to have no discovery in a case and then settle it for such a large amount of money. It's a fairly large settlement within the state of Colorado, without any basis to evaluate it other than, I guess you could be saying that you're like, without regard to anything, we just don't go to court for the city of Loveland. But so I think, a question that I would have in that is, so like our city council doesn't evaluate any evidence and then it agrees to a $3 million settlement, like you don't discuss the evidence? Because usually what it is we can't let this guy be deposed because it'll be a nightmare and he's going to say all these terrible things. Or is it just in general, there's a risk of losing, so you settle for this large number? So I guess it would be a little more, specific to the Garner case, and out of respect, that's why I suggested it be in a executive session.
So, Chair Pryor, what I would tell you is that these cases are evaluated. We have we have litigators, some of the best in Colorado, some of the best in the nation, who are evaluating these cases in terms of their value, the risk of winning, the risk of losing. When SIRSA came in, one of the things, I can't remember if they talked to you about it, but the city has a deductible. And up to that deductible, the city has, a lot more to say. Once the insurer kicks in and the reinsurance kicks in, it's SIRSA's case, it's not the city's case. And they are making the decisions about the value of the case, the risk of winning, the risk of losing. So it's not the city's case at that point to decide, it's the insurance's.
To policy limits. So this is not, we don't need to use the time for this. So we would have questions like that. So if we can, have a time, at some point to
Are you wanting to
talk
make a
through
motion?
those, I would make a motion that we have a discussion specific to the Gardner case and the thought process that went into the settlement. And that can be as a public meeting or as an executive session. And I think that would be a 30-minute conversation.
Are you also wanting to add to the motion that we want to receive the documents from the settlement as well?
Yes.
Okay.
We received the settlement agreement.
Okay.
Thank you.
Second, okay. Any changes to that motion? Yes.
So my question earlier, and don't know if we could tag this onto it, but the email that City Manager Adams sent to us about all the SURSA 10-year history. I don't know if anybody else could understand it. I couldn't understand it. And so it would be interesting if maybe in that discussion, we could maybe talk a little bit about what those numbers actually meant and how this would go, like how it would sit in with those other years. I was just confused. Like I thought when we had the presentation that I understood everything they were saying. And then I got that email and I was like, wow, I don't understand what any of this means and what actually it meant for the city either. And so
I think that would, we had two other, we had the risk manager as one of the people that we wanted to talk to, and that person probably could run us through if we asked for like the 5 or 10-minute version versus a whole big PowerPoint thing, because it's actually not that complicated. There's just a lot of lines. And I think, it is from that loss run that I got the information that there was a settlement agreement had been finalized. So it is related. I kind of would like us to, I think this is the crux of the biscuit. So I kind of don't want to water down that meeting too much, even if at the end of the day, and with all due respect, if at the end of the day, if our city punts everything to outside, that's information that actually goes into a trust issue. Because we spend a lot of money on legal departments and management, this and all sorts of things. So if at the end of the day, the answer is, oh, we didn't even have anything to do with the decision, and the city council just rubber stamped that because it was, below policy limits or whatever. That's information that the community would benefit from knowing, because sometimes people think people are doing things on purpose. And then you find out, oh, it's not on purpose at all. They're just not making any decision.
Right.
And then it goes into trust of leadership. So sometimes the answer to, it wasn't based on my opinion, or it wasn't me, that's information. So I would like to at least spend a half hour on the role of city leadership in decision-making process using the Garner litigation as an example, because I think that's been such a source of miscommunication and then mistrust. So I kind of want to keep, but if we could do a 5 or 10 minute from the risk manager, he can run through what those things are. I could show you if you want.
So maybe based off of that, are you wanting to hold off, or are you still wanting to?
maybe I can meet and have lunch with Natalie and she can explain.
There we go. Okay.
I just was lost.
Gotcha.
It made no sense.
And then Gary, did you have something you wanted to add to that motion?
Excuse me. Yes, in discussion, the motion, you must be careful because I believe there are 5 specific reasons to go into an executive session. Some of those are for personnel action, receive legal advice, and I can't come up with all of them. And I don't see the presentation on this fitting that, so I don't think we need the executive session part in the motion.
So you're saying make it for a public meeting? Okay.
I do think that having been in a few executive sessions, I do think that there are times when I don't want to take away that ability to do that if we feel like it's something we need to do, because I think sometimes the problem I have is that if there are things that if they can not share things with us in a public meeting based on the idea that it's confidential, or that, and I would rather at least have that open. I'm not kind of encouraging. I think executive sessions should be used only when appropriate and within the state statute, but but they are allowed, they are legal, and I would just, it would be my preference that we at least give ourselves the flexibility to make that request to the city manager and the city attorney if we feel like that there are things that they're kind of hiding. I don't want to hiding behind, I guess. Does that make sense?
Then I'll restate my motion. I move.
I have another discussion for Dr. Schultz. There, what happens a lot of times is you make that type of motion, and if you look at the city council agendas, it say such and such motion, and they go back in and hold the whole discussion in executive session. I think what you're trying to get at and saying is that if we start this discussion, we go down the road and suddenly get to this point, we can pause, make the motion, and go into executive session at that. Keep the main discussion public where it should be. And then if it crosses into that boundary, then we can motion and go into executive session.
And Commissioner Barrett, did you have anything to add?
Yeah.
I just want to encourage that we do include someone from the, the risk manager from SURSA, because I don't know, maybe I'm wrong about this, but I don't know if Attorney Garcia would be able to answer why certain recommendations were made. Did it have to do with video evidence, for example? Was that a major consideration? Would you be able to address that? Or, would the risk manager be able to address that if we have them there? Make it as productive as possible, even if it's 10 minutes longer.
I think that would be great. So I was, okay, I'll start over because I was trying to respect the parameters that City Attorney Garcia and City Manager Adams sort of imposed on all those conversations. So, and perhaps we can clarify, and perhaps they will assist in clarifying. I just want to kind of state, unlike city council, we didn't have a big discussion about whether everything had to be formally funneled. So I'm actually more comfortable with people just responding. So yeah, I mean, if we could do that, they sort of already declared it as confidential. So that's why I put it in executive session. So if they're willing to clarify that they're comfortable talking about the Gardner case with us, maybe because of the passage of time and release of reports and stuff like that, then let's go back and revisit it. But we couldn't ask the SURSA guy about that. He probably wasn't the guy anyway, because he was general counsel. He wasn't defense counsel. But, and he just wanted to show us his PowerPoint presentation. So yeah, so I mean, I don't know. I mean, maybe it's more a question for them, and maybe, I don't know. I mean, we could make it like 21 questions, or they could just say, hey, how about this idea, which I would prefer. But, so I mean, the point is, we have the settlement agreement. It's a done deal. We're not going over to, the Garner family and asking them about it and stuff like that. We're being real. We're playing really clean. And so, and I want to keep it that way. So if they're comfortable talking about it, then let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. But
Do you want to just ask them?
okay, so I will ask them. I don't know whether it's Mr. Adams or Mr. Garcia. Can we have a conversation with you or with the parties who you would defer to for better information about our questions about the litigation and the settlement and how you get to the settlement agreement?
What you're saying is, we don't necessarily know that answer right now. So I think it is a good idea to make it a recommendation, take it back, talk with outside counsel and SURSA about the proposal.
You don't know the answer.
What can be revealed and what can't.
Oh, and who can, I understand that's a confidentiality issue. And so that would go to the executive session question.
Right.
Okay. And then in terms of, in terms, is the only issue whether it's still confidential? Or, I mean, are you holding, we were asked not to inquire with Chief Ticer and with the gentleman from CERS, I can't remember his name, about the Gardner litigation. So are you more comfortable with us exploring that now since it's?
Well, that's where I need to, for some of the other attorneys, one of the issues that, is appeal is continuing.
What's the appeal? What does Ash have to do with Gardner litigation?
So real quick, I'm gonna, sorry,
Oh.
I'm going to interject. I apologize. How about we do this? Let's go ahead. Let's restate the motion, and we will keep the who we invite from the city broad. So then that way the appropriate individuals who would be associated with that discussion will be invited. So if you would like to, okay. Then I make a motion that we have a meeting. Sorry. I motion that we, I guess, send out an invitation to city council and all appropriate CIRSA and city officials to have a discussion about the settlement pertaining to the Karen Garner case. And that we also receive the settlement itself, the documents. Sorry.
A second.
Cool. All right. Anybody else have anything to add to that? Okay, while we're ahead, let's go ahead and vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those not in favor, please raise your hand. All right, the motion passes.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I was kind of interested in hearing the city attorney complete that, yeah, he was, and he was talking about an appeal, which was kind of new information at least. And so I was kind of hoping he could finish that thought before we move on, if that's okay.
Sure. Sorry, I just wanted to, we had the motion on the table, but sure, go for it.
They can't hear you.
Speak up, please.
So the appeal is related to the Karen Garner case. When that appeal is concluded, that is what will trigger the release of the entire file. That's the piece we're waiting on.
But we were wondering how Officer Ash was involved in the Gardner litigation.
And so I wouldn't say more than that right now.
I don't even know who he is.
Officer Ash is one of the ones who was sued. And as far as I'm concerned, and there was an appeal.
So
Oh, the guy that was fired?
Attorney Garcia, can you not share what's been publicly shared? There's been some information in the newspaper about Ash requesting documentation through records, police records. I mean, I've read that. I'm not an attorney and I don't have any in, so can you just elaborate on that?
No, I cannot because I don't know exactly what the newspaper
Okay.
said, so I don't want to go beyond.
Okay. Well, it's been in the newspaper, so those of you that have a subscription to the Reporter Herald,
So
you can look it
I
up.
think I know what it is. So City Attorney Garcia is considering, as part of the litigation, a separate incident where an officer, I think, requested documents relating to the litigation. And that is a very big stretch in my view. Just since we're talking about trust about everything, but that's information. So thank you for that. And we'll look forward to the discussion.
And then Jessica, did you have a clarifying question or is this a different topic question?
No, different topic coming back to.
Okay, I have Catherine Bullard in front of you for different topic question, if that's okay.
Okay.
It goes Bullard, you, and then Hildebrand. Sorry. Commissioner Bullard.
Okay, we have spent so much of our time, I mean, close to 100% of our time talking about issues involving Loveland Police. And that's, although the major thing that we're supposed to be talking about, and I understand that I believe that there are other issues that have nothing to do with LPD. And the one to me that I would like to work on has to do with Loveland's recycling issues. And I think that there's a lot going on. Actually, there's not a lot going on, and that's my concern. And, you know, there have been various other communities who've done different things. I don't know what we have done. And I know that we have a relatively new person in charge of the recycling part from Public Works. Tyler Vandermeer, I think is his name. And I had put a call into him just to get to know him, and I have not heard back from him. But that would be something that I think is big in Loveland. And especially since Loveland is, you know, for 5 or 6 years has had the best recycling record in the entire state, well above Boulder, by the way.
Subtle brag, subtle brag.
Why not?
I would like to voice that I like the idea of us venturing out into something else at some point. I wrote that down as the goal, kind of, maybe not necessarily recycling. We as a group might find that it's something else, but I do think that between what we've already done as a group, as well as the implementation groups that are going on, and just so many different things that are kind of being put into place, Chief Ticer leaving, we've got so many variables, and we need to see what happens whenever we put all of our effort into those. So I personally am open to the idea of us looking into something else. So I appreciate your input on that. And then Jessica Schneider. Sorry for making you wait.
That's okay. No, it's fine. I appreciate everyone's input. I want to put forward, you know, I'm not sure what the timeline is, and maybe City Manager Adams could help us or help me understand that, for hiring a new police chief. But I really see an opportunity for the Trust Commission and commissioners to potentially actually really improve trust with the community by either pitching questions to the new candidates, the final candidates, maybe opening that up to community members, potentially. And I think we should make sure that whatever questions are asked are from a diverse group of our community members. And I mean that as far as race, class, experience, whatever. I think that would be a really big, good move. And I don't know that, like, for our final recommendations, that might be too long. So I guess I want to make a motion, but first I want to ask Manager Adams, like, what is the timeline for that?
We're working on that. I just have to say that. We are in the process now of trying to find the firm. And once we have the firm in play, then we will know about how long it'll take to go through that process with the selected firm. Normally that process is somewhere between 4 and 6 months, depending on how soon we get them in, what we talk about. Some of the things that we look at and we used as the fire chief model when we hired our new fire chief, is the board was able to think of some questions that they wanted to ask. And those were incorporated into either the public comment section or in the individual interviews we had with the different candidates. So there'll be lots of opportunities to have you participate. I actually was going to bring you a copy of the job description and let you take a look at it. So I'm not ready to do that yet, but I think there's lots of ways that we're looking to involve this group, and PCAP, you know, which is in play right now and still in the books, is the advisory board for them. We're working on a library selection right now for a library director, and that's one of the things they've done. So we think that would be a good idea for here too as well.
Well, I appreciate that so much. Are you able to commit to, and I guess I would have to make a motion for the entire commission to agree to this, but would the city be willing to commit to incorporating us in this process?
To the extent allowed by our city process and procedures, yes. I mean, I've already told you how we're planning to do that. So
Jessica, just so you know, and there are a couple of clarifying questions that will be asked before any motions should be made. But I do want to just remind you that there is a chance that by the time we're towards the end of this hiring process, this commission may no longer exist. So I'm just reminding you of that come time for the language that you put in your motion, if and when you do.
I appreciate that. And I'll hold for a minute. Thank you, City Manager Adams and Chair Pryor.
And then Vice Chair had a question, and then Commissioner Barrett.
Mr. Adams, I have a question for you. How is a hiring firm selected to hire a new police chief? How does that work?
So we view that as a professional service, and the process can vary a little bit depending on the cost that we estimate for the process to occur. So right now, depending on that cost, there's different procedures we have to follow. But we have a couple different ways to develop a list of eligible candidates. One is we can put it out and just find that out. Another one is there's other communities in the Front Range that have gone through a recent hiring of a police officer chief, and we can use their list of developed candidates, and that's what makes the list take a little bit less time to get going, because we can start with something. If you go out and bid and find somebody, it takes a little bit longer to do that process. And then once that firm's on board, we go through a negotiation process for what their scope of services are and everything, and go from there. But it's a pretty detailed process. So.
Can I have a follow-up question to that real quick?
Sure.
And so who makes the decision on the firm? Is it council or is it staff?
I do.
You do, okay.
Every person in the city, except for the city attorney and the municipal court judge, report to me and their staff. So.
Okay. Commissioner Barrett.
So totally commend you for being on top of a wonderful opportunity to instill trust in this community by involving them in this process. And I think one of the recommendations that we should make to City Council is to support you 1,000% in what you are doing with that. To have sessions where the public can be apprised of the criteria, the hiring criteria that you're going to share with us, share it with the public, to have a meet the candidates session that's publicized, to have almost like Supreme Court nomination hearings, have the candidates interviewed publicly so that people understand the questions, like maybe even City Council does this. Just asking the questions that we want to know who our new chief of police is going to be. And then when that person is hired, the entire community has been involved with that selection by perception anyway. So bravo, that's all.
I'm sorry, I thought you were going to say something, City Manager. Ron, real quick, I added you to the list. You'll be behind Tara unless, is it about what we're talking about now?
Actually, it would be better to do it now.
Oh, okay.
And it'll be quicker that way, because Commissioner Barrett just hit on the very topic that I thought was most important. And having the citizens involved is important. In my opinion, the most important part is having the citizens feel that they had all of the information and were involved. And I think one of the things that our commission can do is look at 3 or 4 or 5 different ways that we can communicate with the citizens to make them feel up to date on what's going on, and to make them feel that they really were involved and have an ownership in that. But your comments were very.
Perfect. Okay. Then I believe, Tara, that's you.
I didn't mean to
jump in front of you. No, because you're kind of underlining what I was going to say anyways. But so with what I'd like to see us in September at, I loved Commissioner Ballard's Citizen Complaint Authority. But I would tweak it because I think it should be separate from the PCAB. Barrett, I said the wrong word. Sorry, I like you too. So I would like to see something like that. And then everybody's kind of talking about the communication, but I think like that would probably be huge if our commission could somehow come up with a way that the city is able to bring about communication where everybody feels like they at least have the opportunity to voice their opinions and experiences. And I feel like both, even the officers in their interviews that Jensen and Hughes talked about, they all said the exact same thing too. So I feel like what everything's getting boiled down to is the leadership of the city communicating with everybody underneath and coming up with avenues for us to be able to provide those linkages of the communication so that people do feel like they do have an input and a say and an impact on their community and can voice what they would like their community to be seen as. I feel like if we could accomplish something like that, it would change our community and the trust level would be night and day. But also, and the other thing I really want to attack after listening to the officers so much is the overtime and understaffed. It seems like it's been like this for years. And then I'm also concerned of, so if they do get it fully staffed, how are the officers going to feel like when they no longer have all these overtime hours? So their salary is significantly less than what it is now because they're getting so many overtime hours, at least from what I hear them saying. So I just feel like that could be a really big problem trying to get, I don't know, when I sit and listen to it, I just see this huge problem being, if when you attack it, it might become really big. So I don't know if the city has even thought about that issue with their salaries and the overtime that they're receiving at this point. But that was just one. And I feel like I loved Miss Yost. And I feel like she is a wealth of experience in communication. So if we could somehow get a little partnership with her and her ideas on how to communicate with a broad community, she probably has a wealth of knowledge that we might not have. So.
And then did you have a comment to that, city manager?
Yes, I do. I can make a couple comments if I could. First of all, when Commissioner Barrett was talking earlier about her work in the citizen advice and oversight, she did mention that 5.5, which was the last recommendation there, had to deal with looking at civilian stakeholder groups, using civilian stakeholder groups to look at a citizen advisory board or a citizen review board or something like that. I've already been in contact with our police department because I don't believe that it would be better served if we used a third party to help us with this particular item. Because particularly Jensen Hughes, who actually, if you knew Sydney, she was one of the people who was in one of the groups. She manages a civilian oversight group as a consultant. And so our intent on that one is to get all the feedback we can from the community on this, but also to use a consultant to help us with this, because I think there is a split between what they might do and what the PCAB would do. And they had the PCAB description here, in a lot of cases, to me, sounded like somebody that might do that was the civilian oversight group would do. So it seems like they're mixed right now. And so we want to bring some clarity to that. So I just want to let you know the city's intent there on that particular item. It is so important. And we're not schooled in it because we've never done it before. But I think that we want to have somebody that has done that before give us their recommendations for our community and get feedback from our community about how that should work. So that's the plan for that. The second thing is I will talk about the police just for a second. One is that right now we have 104 officers on the street. We're authorized 115. So we have not been at 100 and we were at 118. We've not been at 118 sworn officers for more than about 10 minutes, it seems like, since I've been here 6 years. So part of that problem is keeping up with, it takes so long to get an officer on the street. We have spent more time with lateral transfer and that kind of thing to move people in. The second part of that is I think a lot of these officers would trade overtime for being at home more and seeing their families. I don't think I have to worry about that part because we also are doing some work with their pay plan. A few years ago, we converted them to a step plan like the other communities around here, and made sure that it was compatible with wages in other places. So I'm comfortable and confident in that as the leadership of the police department is, that that's a good step for us. And I want to make sure they don't get burned out. And so I think that's where we're at with what we're looking for. And so we'll be monitoring this. We have some people in academies and other things now. So we'll have more officers out on the streets soon, but I just want to share with you, that's a great concern. We appreciate it.
Real quick, I think Mike Scholl had the question first, and then I'll.
Yeah, I'll be quick. Thank you for that. I appreciate that explanation. I was going to bring to your attention, and perhaps it's something you thought about, but having in my profession working with a lot of municipalities across the Front Range in Wyoming, a lot of particularly smaller communities, so I don't know if it'll fit here, actually actively recruit police officers through high school or other programs and actually pay for some training or police academy training under certain circumstances to try to get police officers who have kind of have their roots in the community. And so, I just would suggest if you have that opportunity or if you've looked into that, I think it seems to have worked in other communities.
Yes, city manager.
Thank you, Michael. Again, your genius is showing itself. We have found recently that the best way to not only recruit police officers, but staff in other departments too, water and power department and other areas, is to try and find ways to make that connection at a younger age and get them through high school and college, intern programs and so forth. And they are the ones that are connected to our community and have that ability to grow in our community. So we're doing that right now. We have a couple of officers who have been in the younger version, the younger Scout Ranger program that we have, the youth program. And so they show familiarity. The officers see them doing these things. They know they're good men and women that would be great police officers in the future. And we help them through the academy program and pay for that so that then we can have them brought back into the community. And they already know their way around the community. They know where everything's happening and they're off and running. In a lot of cases, you bring somebody else there. The other thing we try and do is cut down the amount of training in some cases by doing lateral moves. And we're finding ourselves attracting officers in the mid grades from other communities across the United States.
Thank you. Commissioner Walsh.
I was thinking, so since I'm good at being critical, I also am good at helping people, shine the light on themselves. One of the things that's been going on throughout our commission, the commission of this commission, is the city has been doing proactive, remedial, rehabilitative things. Without getting, too broadly beyond, and I would say, I think if the city, instead of bringing things up anecdotally, if you just make a list of things that the city's done since October 25th, in response to the trust issues created by the Garner arrest, because I think there's been a lot. We can acknowledge that this has been going on, maybe because they were afraid of us. No, you guys have been doing stuff. And if there was just a list of those act those things. You know, again, not everything you've done, the city's done since October, but stuff that's rehabilitative, you know, since the Garner incident. I mean, I think even the summer, they brought in the Alzheimer's group for training and stuff. That was, I think, the first thing I had heard of that I was like, oh, look, they're being proactive. They're not waiting for someone to. So I think if that list was there, we could acknowledge and express our appreciation for that, because these are good things. And everyone wants to hear good stuff too. So I make a motion that the city make a list of, yes, question, yes, yeah, yes, you.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
You still have, in fairness, an item of questions. Still one item I have not fulfilled. That is taking all press releases that we send. All the information, more information. Have that. We have responses, which are exactly what you asked for. What programs, what things we initiated, where we're at, some of these. I believe that was, if it doesn't, then we'll be happy to run the rest right now. But I think we're right on track. I'm hoping to release that tomorrow or the next day.
Yeah.
So but that's exactly, I appreciate that. That's one of the things you asked for initially early on. It's taken us a while to go back, collect all the press releases, all the statements, all the things. Put those down in a readable format so that you can understand them. And also we can report status of it, some of them changed. And then send that out to you. That will be the last research document.
Okay, I think that.
I'm sorry, we missed one search.
So good.
Just
Okay.
a few questions. We have just have a couple questions about.
And then Commissioner Black had a clarifying question, I believe.
It's just an additional.
Oh, an additional, sorry, forgive me.
I'm just wondering, city manager, if you've requested from LPD with their communication and engagement groups that's happening right now, something we've been hearing in the Jensen Hughes report from officers, Karen Gardner, there's some kind of mishap with communication from the LPD to the city. And I don't know if that's LPD's responsibility or if that's a request from the city. But I haven't heard that come up in this group yet. And I'm wondering if that's something that we can bring up from the CDC, or if that's something that you bring up from them, to kind of clean up, streamline, and make clear communications from LPD as far as like high risk incidents and things that could be risky, liability, that sort of thing for the city. What the communication, there's written policies through the LPD, or if the city that requires a certain amount of communication from them to the city. I'm just curious about that.
Thank you. That's a great question and something that you already have hit on. And I acknowledge that one is something we needed to improve on. Right now, Nicole Yost is handling, she's talking to the police department on a daily basis. If there are high risk instances that occur, there is a press release almost out immediately. If we have a car accident, fatality, you've seen those hit the press pretty quickly, those type of things. It's that next level of communication that is there that has a little bit more touch to it. And we talked a little bit about that of an incident on a standoff that occurred, and how that came out. And on one hand, that came out a lot sooner than we would have ever done it before. And it had us involved, it had our Nicole involved, it had a lot of people involved in it. So to institutionalize that, and that's not in a bad word, but to make sure it's a solid process or procedure, we have to work on that one. And that's part of the communication plan that some of you are working on. I know Nicole's working on that herself because she believes that's important. And part of that communication plan is, when is the city communicating? When is PIO, police department, which has their own PIO, communicating? How are they talking to each other? that they're going to send a message out, and who is the final clearance on that message and so forth. So we have some work to do in that, but at least we've got the starting point now for it.
All right. And then last question of the day goes to our vice chair.
This is more like goals.
Okay. Oh, okay. Yeah.
So I guess one of the goals that I have is just making the public more aware of what's going on and aware of opportunities that they have to speak and let people know that they have an issue. And I think Let's Talk Loveland is going to be a good start for us to get going on that. But people don't have the courage to speak unless they are informed. So informing people and making sure that they have the opportunity to communicate with the city and however that is. But I think that should be an important goal, just to give people a little bit more power to feel like they can speak.
Yes.
I mean, can we talk about that?
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah. Like, how do we do that?
the Let's Talk Loveland is a good first step. We can provide them information that we've gathered. They can then become informed. They have an opportunity on there to speak to us. How it continues after we're done, I'm not sure about that, but I think we can focus on the Let's Talk Loveland and make it great and make it's like we talked about Facebook. It's not a thing people like. The newsletters and the what do they call it? Your bill, you know? And you're like, I throw that right out. I'm like, look at my bill, throw it right out. I never look at that. But having a place where there's some communication happening, right? Like, I don't know. And more ideas would be great, but like goal, informing people.
Because I mean, you know, I actually thought all the public comment would come here and lay off a city council. And I don't know why city council didn't encourage that, because that was something I actually told Overcash at my interview. He did, I guess he wanted people to still come talk to him. So I'm kind of surprised. I mean, we're here, there's, you know, I'm chatty, you know, and I'm really surprised that people aren't here and, you know, they'll watch the thing or whatever, but people never talk about, oh, did you watch? You never see any conversation on it. You know, I don't know if people like pull up the minutes and read them. So I'm just kind of wondering, you know, how to do that really.
Yeah, something that I've noticed kind of the same thing, because, you know, there are definitely Facebook groups that I'm a part of that during the summer, they were very passionate about this issue. And I've encouraged many of them to come see us and come speak, and, you know, and it's, yeah. And so it's an issue of engagement that I think we know how to get the word out there, but it's how do we get people to actually put their butt in a seat, you know? But Shoal, and then you, yes.
Yeah, I was kind of leading into that. I mean, maybe my comment may not be as artful as Commissioner Walsh or the chairman's, but I mean, I think I struggle with that all the time. I mean, I think because, you know, because I do think communication is a two-way street. I mean, and I think to some degree, I mean, the city, there is a higher level of transparency. My experience is there's a very high level of transparency that exists within the city. And I think part of that, you know, is the fact that, you know, but on the other side of it, from a community perspective, you know, people aren't engaged. And I think it's their right to choose to be engaged or not engaged. And, you know, until something rises to a level that, you know, where they're directly affected, which, and I think at my core, it really bothers me because, and I don't have a good answer for it, because we interact with local government more on a day-to-day basis than any other government. You know, if you ask someone about the federal government, they can complain, or Congress, but the fact of the matter is we as citizens engage with local government on a day-to-day basis in ways we don't even understand, either be it our utilities, our roads, our law enforcement, our planning and zoning, our building permitting. I mean, you name it. And so I don't have a good answer other than I can just kind of go off on a rant and express my frustration. But I do think to some degree, you know, I have to respect the fact that if people aren't showing up and people aren't engaged, they've kind of moved on from this issue a little bit. And I think, and I don't know that, you know, I don't say that necessarily as something, it means that we should stop doing what we're doing, because I don't think that's the case. I think we do need to make sure that processes are in place, but I do think we have to kind of listen to that silence as well, so.
All right, Black, Barrett, then Schneider. Oh, it's just follow-up, okay.
So, and you could be absolutely correct in that there's a little bit of apathy or complacency or whatever that's going on. But what I see and what I hear is more of a feeling of distrust. I was so excited about the Let's Talk Loveland that I broadcasted out to a couple of people and they were like, well, who runs that? Oh, the city. It was, the comment that I got. And I see a lot of fear and discouragement that might be contributing to some of the silence. Just a thought.
Commissioner Black.
I'm back on goals. One of my biggest things is the mental health and drug addiction issue that we have in our city, and that our police force, our EMS group, our co-responder program are dealing with day in and day out. Loveland has the highest number of calls that uses the co-responder program for all of the Larimer County law enforcement offices that are using that. Loveland has the highest calls. And that's something that I want to ensure at the end of this, that the public is clear on what the Summit Stone co-responder program is. I think that came to light one of our last meetings with Commissioner Vick responding to the House and the standoff. I don't think that the public is clear on what that program is and its parameters, and that it's different in Fort Collins than it is in Loveland, than it is in Estes Park. There's a primary response model. There's a secondary response model. I know we have additional funding right now for 2 extra co-responders. But I do feel like that could be a Let's Talk project on the city website, the co-responder program, so that the community members could ask questions and learn about that. I think that'd be a good listening session with the library. I think it would serve us. I think all of you could also learn something about that co-responder program, and the liaison with the LPD, which is Sergeant Wheeler, I believe. They have offered to come and give us that presentation. And so that's one of my goals, is to make sure that this commission, including the public, are more informed of what that program is and what it's supposed to provide and what it does not provide. And as far as allocation of funds for the LPD, that would be my first priority. They get those calls all day long, 24/7. And it's only increasing. And I would like to see more funds allocated for that. I would like to ask City Council for that additional co-responder program. And I'd like to know if all of you are interested in getting a presentation from Summit Stone and the liaison at the police department. Awesome.
Has that already been passed by us, or are you trying to make a motion for that? Sorry.
Sure. I'll move that the commission invites the Summit Stone co-responder program and the liaison with the LPD to come and give us a presentation on that.
Second. Any changes to that? Anyone? All right. Yeah, city manager.
I have lunch tomorrow with the Thompson Valley EMS chief.
Mhm.
There's another program called the CARE program, which is done by the Thompson Valley EMS. So if you only want to know about Summit Stone, you can do it. But if you'd like to hear about the CARE program too, I'd be happy to bring it.
No, that'd be awesome to have
So that's kind of a more fun.
because they all work together. And one of the things I'm curious about is how they cross-train with LPD. And so I think, and just to inform us so that we can be agents in the community to inform others, but have all the right intel and information, because I don't, based upon that last meeting, it just seemed like it wasn't really clear. And if we're not clear on that, then we can't go out and share that with the community. And even my closest people are still unclear on what that co-responder program is. And I've worked with Summit Stone for over 5 years and have been telling people till I'm blue in the face, and it's still confusing to people. So I think that needs to be a push. And I'm.
And if there are other entities that also do the same sorts of stuff, just include whoever needs to be included.
Well, yeah, EMS, Summit Stone, and then the liaison with LPD. I think unless somebody has another agency to add, I think those three are the trifecta, right? Okay.
Then if you'll do me a favor and revise your motion real quick. Thank you.
Sure. I move that the CDC invite Summit Stone Co-Responder Program, the liaison with LPD, and the head of EMS to come give us a presentation. Care program.
Second.
Awesome.
All right. Pause for just a second. Did you have something, Ron? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those not in favor, please raise your hand. Motion passes. All right. I know that I still had Commissioner Schneider and Hildebrand both to speak, but for time constraints, I hope you guys are okay with me moving on to the last item on our agenda, which is planning for the next meeting. I will go over real quick.
Mine was just a response to the apathy of the community.
Okay, sure.
The response from the city to the people who do speak up is basically zero. So like if you get on the Let's Talk Loveland, there's lots of people who put in little suggestions. There's very few responses on it that I found when I looked at it. And so I think we teach our community to be apathetic. Actually, you can voice your opinion, but there's usually not a real response to it other than like, we'll look into it.
Jessica, yes, real quick.
Thank you. Real quick, I just want to affirm what the commissioner just said, and that was one of the comments I wanted to make. You know, there's a concept in psychology called learned helplessness. And when we ask for things that we need and are put down or dismissed or not attended to, we can create learned helplessness. And I worry that many of our community members are experiencing that. So just wanted to float that idea, not making a motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so now that we're moving towards agenda planning for our next meeting, I do want to just go over all of the goals that I've written down. Hopefully I got all of these. There might be a couple, Catherine, of yours that I might not have quite written down fast enough, so I apologize. But just keep these in mind as we're trying to figure out what we want to do for the next meeting and see what we can accomplish. So I have implement major changes to PCAB, address systemic issues with the Karen Garner case, mental health resources and drug abuse resources, and communicating that to the public. Citizen Complaint Authority, I have a note that says separate from PCAB, executive session to go through these settlement documents, which we made a motion on, look into other issues, whether that's recycling, environmental, whatever else, allowing the CTC to have a hand in the police chief hiring process, working to get the community in on the hiring process for the police chief as well, address the overworked and understaffed officers, publicize this group more, as well as the things that the city is doing, and then looking into the co-responder program and having a listening session as well as a Let's Talk Loveland page for that. So with that, we've got about 10 minutes before we need to. Okay, I motion that we extend the meeting by 15 minutes. It'll say 7:45 up there, yeah, but 8:45 in actual time. There we go. Okay, so yes, 8:45 for the meeting end.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please raise your hand. Okay, all those not, please raise your hand. Okay, passes. All right, so what are we wanting to look into for the next meeting? And let's be brisk. Yes.
So I want to go back to my motion, and City Manager Adams offered to invite CARE.
Mhm.
I'm offering to invite Summit Stone and the liaison from LPD. Do we have a date that we could ask these professionals if they have open on their calendar?
City Manager.
I guess my ignorance is that we have a contract. So I prefer to be invited.
Oh, okay, no problem. Sure.
I don't know if the schedule is, but I'll check it out since my motion is that. Looking at the next meeting, see if that works out. I do want to say that we've had a co-responder briefing now 3 times from the city council. It takes about 30 minutes to tell miles. And then the care program, I'm not sure if it's not at the same time. So if you have a time period of how much time you want to spend on this, let me know so I can have that tailored presentation.
I mean, I would presume between the presentation and Q&A afterwards, we would want it to just use the whole meeting, correct? A lot of head nodding. Okay. Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion just on that?
Sure.
To me, this is a topic that would be of broad interest. And I think we should do some extra outreach to try and get butts in the seats that might be interested in
Mhm.
hearing about this, because I think it's it's of community interest. So whether it can be a little brief in the paper or something on Facebook from the city, or I don't know what, but I think it would behoove all of us to get that out there.
Okay.
So.
Natalie?
I was going to say if we could find out if that's going to happen for the next meeting and then do all that. But if we could find, rather than wait 2 weeks to find out if that's going to happen, in the alternative, what could happen is we could discuss the settlement agreement in that meeting, because that's just a 5-minute question that he just needs to find out if that's something we can talk about. So if the Summit Stone and the CARE people are not available for the 4th, in the alternative, I'm suggesting that we do the settlement agreement discussion, just to knock that out.
Yes, Mike.
I wanted to go back to your list, if that's okay.
Yeah. You want me just to hand it to you?
What's that?
Do you want me just to hand it to you?
No. I just had you had indicated, and I'm going to blame Commissioner Walsh. So if you don't like my comment, you can. Commissioner Walsh made a very kind of important, I think, comment earlier about, because you had indicated, you said kind of a systemic issues, but I really think that the accountability issue is one that I think should be at our core. I think that between the accountability and then the oversight and any processes, kind of public processes going forward to kind of provide oversight are, to me, the two most enduring recommendations that we can make. And I think that, the cynical fear I had when we were talking about the settlement issue is that it's because people didn't want to talk about what happened, because we've arrested a couple, the line, the lower level officers, they've been charged, and rightfully so, but that, and that's it, right? And that, because I do think it's important to me, the basis, this just really hits at the core of public trust, that we hold leadership accountable. And I'm going to say this and I'm not talking about city council. City council is an elected unpaid or mostly unpaid body that represents the citizens. I mean, and I say this with a great amount of respect, but I do think it hits upon the city manager and the city attorney to kind of discuss how they were informed of this process and the actions that they took, so that we can understand, was it done appropriately and responsibly and in the best interest of our community, before I'm comfortable going forward or making any other recommendations. So I with that kind of long kind of editorial, what I would ask is that we not talk about, I mean, from a systemic, that we talk about just basic accountability. And I think that's really important. And if we do anything, I mean, those two things, I think for me are paramount.
Well, and I think that with accountability, normally you can fix systemic issues too. So I think that might be a two birds, one stone. But Natalie, I did like your suggestion of, if we can't get the mental health professionals in, we turn to the discussion about the settlement. So anybody else have anything to add? Yes, Commissioner
Well,
Willard.
and then I'm presuming, but I don't want to presume, that that if if those entities can come next time, we will know immediately, so we can try to spread the word ourselves.
Sorry, say that again for me one more time.
So that if those three entities, Summit Stone, Care, and the LPD folks, if they can come, that we'll get that word ASAP, so that we know what we're going to be doing, and invite people if they want.
I'll let you talk.
City attorney, may I ask a question? Do we need to formally request that if the care team can't come, that we could have that discussion? Is that something that we need to make formal, or is it just?
You can certainly make it formal as a recommendation. That is always how I prefer, so that I know that the body has taken action and that I would treat that recommendation appropriately.
Yeah, so what she's asking is, because, right now we've basically told the city manager that if we can't get the mental health professionals in, then we would like to have the discussion about the settlement. And so she is just wanting to clarify that we need to make a motion essentially to say, okay, if we can't bring in the mental health care professionals, we absolutely want to do the settlement session.
Are you talking about, just to be clear?
No, you're fine.
Is it, but it's the next meeting, but I mean, I'm confused, because I think we need to talk about both.
Mhm.
But I don't know if I'm getting lost. Okay.
Natalie.
If I understand correctly, City Manager Adams agreed to bring in the mental health teams from Summit Stone and CARES, hopefully for the next meeting. He's going to check to see if they're available. City Attorney Garcia requested that we make a motion with request to the settlement and the Garner litigation and settlement discussion. And so I move that in the event that the mental health professionals are not available for our next meeting, that we request City Attorney Garcia to advise us and confirm the availability of the team to discuss the settlement litigation at our next meeting.
Second, okay.
He just wanted a motion.
All right. Does anybody have anything to add to that? No? Okay. All those in favor, please raise your hand. All those not in favor, please raise your hand. The motion passes. Okay. Does anybody have anything else to add? Because if not, then we can end at the time that we were originally supposed to. Yes, City Manager.
not trying to make you run over, but I did want to remind this group, we've sent an email out. I know you're getting bombarded by emails and I apologize, but we're trying to give you all the information you've asked for. The April 22nd meeting, normally scheduled for this room is going to be unavailable. We're putting in a new sound system, a new video system, a new broadcast system. So we have to tear this place down and have it down for a while. So our next meeting would all be Zoom on the 22nd. Which is the council quarterly update meeting, not the next meeting, which is the 4th. That's okay. But the 22nd, which is your next quarterly update, that would be remote.
Could you repeat that? Could you, yes.
We had some jokesters over here.
Is Zoom is which one?
22nd.
And that's our meeting. And then the 26th is when we present to council again, and that's going to be in person?
25th. I'm sorry. It's the 25th. Always get messed up.
25th is council's meeting or our meeting?
Your meeting is it? Yes, and it is the
So yes, we will be meeting April 18th. Correct. So, okay, so 18th will be Zoom.
Got it. Okay.
It is not.
Oh. Patrick can't hear you, but it just, yeah, yeah.
One is your first meeting is April the 4th. Your second meeting is April the 18th.
Yes.
Council has a meeting on the 19th, and that will be in chamber. Then on the 20th is when we shut this down. So then a meeting on the 26th, which is your meeting with city council and study session to give your quarterly update.
Gotcha.
Okay.
So our, yes, so, okay. So our 18th meeting, we will still be in here. Got it. Okay. Got it. Okay. Thank you, Lori, for having us clarify.
Do we want that to be a Zoom meeting, a Zoom presentation?
You know, I may not get crucified as bad if it's a Zoom presentation. So, you know, I'm all for it.
Nice smiley face on there.
Oh, I got some tips from Shoal. We're good.
Okay.
How many of us? And how? Okay, so on the meeting for the 26th, where you present to city council, how many of, can we find out if we can all somehow attend, even if we're not presenting part of the presentation?
There should be a Zoom link for them, correct?
So I'm going to be talking right now, and behind you is the person that will correct me because she's the deputy city clerk. So in a meeting that's remote like this, we would promote all of you to participant, and so that you would be able to also respond to questions and so forth. But you would have somebody that's presenting like you did last time. I think a couple of you took turns or whatever to present. So you have your presentation, then you would have the council questions, and then they'd have the whole group of you would be online, visible, like the rest of the public, except you're in a status there where you could then ask a question or something if it came up.
Button, please. Thank you.
As long as that's a really good topic, and this isn't addressed to you guys, to either of the liaison. One of the things that I noticed that when people from the city make presentations, they say, please hold your comments so that you're not, brutalized. And I think that's a good thing. The second thing that we're constantly reminded of, and I appreciate it, and I totally agree, we do not act as independent individuals. We act as a body. So when you're getting pummeled with questions, I object to you answering them, to tell you the truth, because you're answering them as you, and you're not answering them as the commission.
I'm okay
So
with that.
I think that the procedure is, I know, but I mean, I think the procedure is, thank you for your question. I will take it back to the commission. So I think, one of us or three of us can be writing down their questions, but I don't think you should, not only should you not feel compelled to answer them on the spot because you're a helpful person. You shouldn't feel, but you should also be concerned that you might not actually be representing the
Right.
whole opinion of
Right.
everyone. So it's not only to protect you, but it's so that we can act as a body and we can just do it that way. And it'll make it much less painful too.
Agreed.
And if they know ahead of time, if they want to just submit their questions for us, afterwards and writing, something like that, we'll get back to them then.
Ron, you laugh. It was rough. Commissioner
Yeah,
Black.
it was-
We really, right, we all felt for you. We really didn't have much of a chance to have an open discussion as a group after that meeting. One of the things that got to me was the fact that there was a comment made by Counselor Overcash that there were members of our commission going to city council and having some sort of issues that they did not bring up publicly to this commission. And I'm just wondering if that's the case, someone could, I would request that each one of us, if there's an issue that they're having within the commission, if you don't feel like you can verbalize that, you can send it anonymously, maybe through the facilitator, maybe through city manager. But I would ask each and every one of us that if there is an issue that's happening, please bring it to the commission so we can work it out, not to city council, because that doesn't look good. And if you don't feel comfortable raising that and having us know exactly who you are, then let's find a route anonymously then, because that really concerned me. It made me wonder if that was true even. And because I felt like we're all pretty much open books in here.
So,
Me
Jessica,
too.
you can go here in just a second. I will follow up on that real quick, that I do believe to a certain degree that it was true, but I think that the words were weaponized in a way. There was an issue with me and two different individuals on this commission that I had to speak to privately about a mask that I was wearing, that it was too political. And they had, yes. I'm not trying to make a big stink about that right now, but they had gone to Jeffrey and had spoken to others about it in our early stages. And then I talked to them and we were able to get some stuff figured out with that. But I don't think that it was fully a lie, but I think it might've been an exaggeration in the way that he was saying it. And then Jessica.
I just want to give my thanks to you, Jordan, for doing the work that you are doing and have done, and that I know that you were pummeled pretty deeply. Also appreciate Commissioner Walsh's statements that we need to be together as a team effort, that you shouldn't have to respond for all of us, and that we should take our own responsibility. And finally, in regards to statements about the Trust Commission, and this is kind of an aside, but kind of not, on one of the local Facebook politics pages, Councilman John Fogel put forward the idea that the Community Trust Commission voted to not have city council involved, which is just not true.
I respond to that.
Sure.
I'm going to just say a couple things. One is, just as individually, we don't speak for the body. Councilman Fogel is an individual, and what he says on Facebook, and he says a lot on Facebook, doesn't speak for the city council or the city. And I think to the extent that we can keep this discussion and debate off of Facebook, the better off we're going to be. It is just noise. And that's what it comes down to. It's noise. Unless the counselor has the courage of his convictions to sit at the dais in a public meeting and say and make those comments, I don't care. I really don't, because I'm so tired of it in this community. We have these debates on Nextdoor and Facebook, and they're just so toxic and they're so pointless. And I'm really sick of it. And so, and it's no offense, Commissioner Stein, I know a lot of people, they view social media differently than I do, and I totally respect that. But I think one of the challenges is, and one of the piece of advice that I gave to Jordan, having presented to council for many years, is you don't have to respond to comments. If somebody makes a comment and it doesn't require, unless they ask you a direct question, don't answer it, because you don't. Well, no, and I mean, but what I'm saying is, I think to some degree, there is a bit of theatrics to politics, and we all know that, and I don't think we're any different than anybody else. But I think part of it is trying to kind of filter out what is the noise and understand what is really important. And quite frankly, Councilor Fogel and Councilor Overcash and all the other 7 have the ability to make a motion to change the ordinance that we are governed under. And if they don't do that, then everything that they want to comment on Facebook or social media or whatever is noise. If come to the commission, and make a motion to disband this committee or make a motion to change our focus. But again, I think to the extent that we're going to be successful and taken seriously, it's really important that we force our way past a lot of that and really focus on the critical issues and having a strong foundation for the recommendations that we present so that they're forced to take them seriously. And so I really believe that. I with respect to I'm with Commissioner Schneider, that's my opinion. So thank you.
Commissioner Schneider, real quick.
Really quickly. Is that okay?
Yes.
I agree with you, Commissioner Scholl. I did not mention that because it is something I want to stir up anything about. I mentioned it because it was misinformation by a city leader who helped create this commission. And I will correct misinformation whenever I can. And I just want to put that out there. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
And then Vice Chair and then Catherine Bullard. Those will be our last 2 for the evening.
Okay, so this is just a question for all of you. I did that little summary thing. Was it helpful? Should I keep filling it out? Is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll do it.
Commissioner Bullard.
Okay,
Bring us home.
the question that I have is that we were assigned this particular date in April to present to City Council. But I'm not clear why that cannot be changed to just a later date. This is not something that's going to take a huge amount of City Council's time, I don't think. I'm wondering why it can't just be put back. So we can be, I think there was some strength to those of us who were able to be here, and that will be negated if it's just by a Zoom. So that's a question.
That would be something for one of you 2 to answer, I guess.
So we didn't invite us, I'm responsible for the agenda. So I have several items on the agenda that is the Trust Commission. Trust Commission makes a motion to not want to be on that particular meeting. Try and find that week where it could be on.
I will say though, Catherine, if I can actually be in front of my laptop and have my notes in front of me, I think I would be much more effective that way, giving a presentation that way. Now, I do appreciate the strength in numbers because that was very helpful that night and much needed, but it is nice to have actual notes that I can scroll through, highlight, type things that they're saying and things like that.
And I don't know why you couldn't have those anyway, but yeah.
Fair.
Okay.
Okay. All right, y'all. Let's go home.
Okay.